All right. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the today's Inclus webinar on the topic of psychological resilience. We all know that it's a very timely topic, unfortunately, one might say. And I think both at the level of an individual and organizationally, we have been thinking a lot about how to stay calm and just focus on the normal things in life and in organizations when everyone or everything around us seems to be in a bit of a flux. We are joined today by Juhani Mäkinen from a company called Takana. Welcome, Juhani. Good to have
Thank you.
And our own CEO, Mikaeli Langenvainio. Welcome, Miki.
Thank you.
And my name is Irmeli Hirvensalo. I'm heading up marketing here at Inclus. Before we go into the actual discussion, just a couple of technicalities. First of all, we will be recording this webinar and we will make it available to you afterwards. And please go ahead and send in questions and comment at any point during the webinar. And there's this Q&A section under which you can send in your questions and comments, and we will try our best to address them during the webinar as we go along. But without further ado, gentlemen, the floor is yours. Please go ahead, and maybe starting with a bit of further introductions.
Yeah, because it's always interesting to hear and understand from which perspective our guest is coming to talk about the topic of the day. It would be nice, Juhani, if you could introduce yourself a bit and, tell a little bit about what's your angle to psychological resilience.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Miki. So, yeah, my name is Juhani Mäkinen. My professional background, I actually come from the Finnish Navy Special Operations Forces. I was there almost 10 years in multiple roles, and from that point I've changed to private security and risk management business. And during these 22 years or so, I've been traveling a lot, conflict and post-conflict areas, being exposed to many cultures and been talking with a lot of people, and this has given me quite a nice experience of different ways of managing the psychological resilience. I also when I talk about these subjects and these matters, I also take a lot of experience from my personal life, since I say that I am happy that I've had a few pretty serious medical conditions in my life, because those have taught me a lot of things about myself, a lot of things about psychological resilience. And when combining these three realms, personal life, the life inside the wire, meaning the military life, and then outside the wire, meaning the business section, combining these experiences from these three worlds gives a nice cocktail in my perspective on this matter. So that's not a short introduction, but that's an introduction.
Oh, that's a good, very nice introduction. It gives a good sort of cross-cutting of all the aspects of life in general. Like we all have our own dimensions of life and work that we try to cope with and constantly can grow and evolve. Well, I have a bit of similar background. I've been working with the military myself for a few years, and then working with conflict stakeholders in about 20 countries, helping in peace mediation processes and crisis management, and seeing a lot of societies in immense stress and immense sort of serious conditions, and so whole societies under sort of extreme pressure. So I would say that the examples and sort of inspiration to psychological resilience, for me at least, comes from the global sort of society at large, sort of seeing different people from South Sudan or Iraq, Balkans or Afghanistan or wherever, where people are living in such sort of dire straits and conditions that the resilience is something completely different to ours. But yeah, certainly I would say that on more personal terms, just the entrepreneurship and the life, juggling around that is sometimes demanding and asking a lot of resilience from oneself, and that gives maybe a perspective as well for myself. But actually, what I wanted to talk, or why I wanted to talk about this topic today with you was that the sort of Finnish security strategy for society is also emphasizing the factor of psychological resilience quite a bit. So if I share the screen and show you what I mean, is that they have the sort of vital functions of the society mentioned in the strategy. And this year they updated it actually just recently. They raised the psychological resilience as one of the 7. It has been previously also as one of the 7 vital functions of the society, but for a reason they sort of raised it to the top here and want to emphasize its importance for the wider society. So I guess that is sort of this comes to the individual psychological resilience, amounts to at the end of the day organizational resilience and even societal resilience. But maybe we should define a bit what we mean about psychological resilience. Do you have a definition for the term yourself, Juhani?
Not sure if I have an official written down definition of the term itself, but I perceive it as well, let's put it in a very simple format. So for me, resilience is the ability to stand up as fast as you can after you've fallen down. That's in a nutshell. So you have 2 options. When you walk and you trip, you can either lay down or you can stand up and keep going.
Truly. I actually checked. I love to look at definitions, and there's multiple definitions for this. But one was that resilience is about combination of, 1, being durable under stress and pressure, sort of that you can take hits, sort of. But then secondly, also bouncing back after succumbing to an adversity or maybe falling down or getting incapacitated, sort of bouncing back after that. And I guess the term resilient comes from like resilient, and silient is like springing back. So the word and term, the etymology of it actually refers to springing back. So that's kind of interesting term, and taking into consideration that we all are either more or less resilient. So it should be relevant to all of us, a bit like stress, but it's sort of I would say, buzzword today, and many organizations use the resilience, but people don't really think about what does it mean and what does it mean for ourselves. So that's kind of interesting. But what would you say? Why sort of psychological resilience is important for today's world?
Well, we know that today's world is filled with uncertainty. We don't know what's happening tomorrow. Of course, we never know what happens tomorrow. But the past years have pretty much highlighted that we are living in a world where big things can happen overnight. So that's why actually I would like to go back to the concept of risk. So we need to understand what actually risk means for us humans. So risk by definition is uncertainty. So now if you go back what I just said about the world is filled with uncertainty, that means that it is filled with risks. And we humans, we hate risks. That's just the way it is. Now some might think, well, we have skydivers who are take risk and jump out of the plane and stuff like that. But actually, even those guys been there, done that, they don't want to take risks. They really carefully pack the chute and double, triple check to ensure that nothing happens. But by definition, majority of the people want to avoid risk. We feel comfortable when we know and when we are certain of things. And that's partly because when we know, it's much more easier to influence, so we can be in control. So basically, we want to be in control. So now when we don't know what's happening tomorrow, we are not sure how could we control something that we don't know. And this creates questions in our head. And when we have a lot of questions and limited information, we start to create answers based on our fears and biases and, of course, the information available. And this means that we are actually in this kind of world where it's filled with uncertainty. We are really exposed to all kind of manipulation and information operations, and that's why it's really important, especially in these days, that we are aware of how our mind works, how can we endure stress, and how can we cope when there is the next turbulent times again coming.
Certainly. I feel the same, and I'm the same. I want sort of certainty, and everybody basically wants stability. We crave for stability and certainty, but unfortunately, how the world is now unraveling when we are looking at political situation, which is bind to the global security situation. We are looking at the economic situation now with the tariffs and the global recession maybe coming up. We are looking at technological shifts and changes. So I think that the instability is the new normal. That instability actually is the environment where we live in. So we cannot expect stability anymore too much. And I think that the sort of a threat landscape is ever growing. And there's a lot of scenarios that we've been studying as well, which are becoming quite credible. So if sort of serious scenarios becoming credible, they start to fill in your mind, even unconsciously, because you know that they are there. And certainly then it's good to sort of be aware at least on what's happening around you, in the sense that you can have some sort of relation to it. And like you mentioned, if we just have a threat sort of scenario in our mind and we don't necessarily handle it with any kind of structure or purpose, we get more afraid if we don't, because we are creating bad outcomes without actually being able to act on it today, because it's not reality yet, it's somewhere in the future. So we have no tools to actually react on it because it's not today. And I think that people who have sort of learned to act amidst crisis and handle the crisis are not that afraid of the tomorrow's crisis, because they know that they have a mode where they can then operate during the crisis, whatever the crisis is in the future, and they don't ponder too much the upcoming crises, but they can still analyze them, dissect them, prepare for them, and so on. So truly, feel what you say there.
And I think this goes back to actually our emotions. So we are basically driven by our emotions. Our decisions are based on our emotions, and the way we assess our emotions results in certain different feelings. And now if we take these emotions in the concept of risk, and if we are not familiar with this kind of strange feelings we have, strange emotions we have in our body and mind, we don't understand them. They become uncertain, they become risky. And when we want to avoid risky, we want to avoid those kind of emotions. Now, if and when the environment is such as it is, it forces us to have those emotions, but we have no tools to actually, say, okay, I have this emotion. I want to say hi to this emotion, and it creates this kind of feelings. I want to lead my feelings. I don't want the emotions to be, guiding my decisions. So if we are not aware of our emotions, how they feel in our body and mind, it's very difficult to control, and this results easily in a catastrophic thinking and stuff like that.
Truly. That's great. I actually just came across, I did a bit of sort of researching before this webinar. There was a study studying 20,720 people, and there's resilience tests, how resilient you can be perceived to be, and 53.1% reported to be having a low levels of resilience. So majority of the population, I'm not sure exactly what was the sort of what were the geographical regions and so on, but still a big study, and it's a significant thing if majority of the society is not that resilient. But those who had high resilience, they typically had some sort of adaptive coping strategies, like sort of deep acceptance, sort of accepting what you were just saying, that accepting what's coming, and then it is, and then you have to somehow handle it. But if you try to avoid, that tends to lead to bad resilience or low resilience rather than good resilience. That's kind of interesting. And that binds to risk management, because the first thing is to sort of first understand what is the risk, what is the threat, and then you can then see if we can remove, avoid, accept, transfer. But certainly the acceptance is one key element of risk management.
Yeah, and in terms of psychological resilience, it's really important to be able to understand that what are the factors that are under my control or that I can influence, and which are not.
Yeah.
Let's say weather is an excellent example, especially here in Finland. You check the forecast in the evening, and in the next morning it's totally different. There is absolutely nothing you can do for the forecast, and still you hear people complaining and stuff like that. Well, actually one guy said that the things that you cannot, where you have zero control, those are the ones that you actually can't complain about it, because you have no zero control. You cannot do anything about it. But when we think about the weather, we know that, okay, I cannot change the weather, but I can change the way I respond to the different variations of the weather. So in the morning, I can make a decision whether I'm gonna take my rain jacket or umbrella or warm jacket with me, based on what is my capability to respond the changes in the weather during the day. I have zero impact on whether it's gonna sun is gonna shine or it's gonna rain, and this is really important. And this weather thing is a good example of how it works in every situation. I mean, people are in Finland. People are when the war in Ukraine started, people were terrified. Now the war will come to Finland, and now we have to do this and this and this. And like, many people came to ask about me, hey, is the war going to start in here? I said, I don't know, but there's nothing I can do about it. So why should I think of it every day?
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's something also that I think that as a former special forces operator, you have gotten used to the idea of threats. That's the whole business, dealing with threats day in, day out, basically. But now when people, especially in Finland and in Europe perhaps more widely, have been perceiving risks as some sort of accidents, that something bad might happen to us. But threat is something that where somebody's actively trying to do bad things to you. And threat as a self, as a phenomena, is not that sort of new or personal for many people. And when they start feeling threatened, the sense of security declines quite a lot. But for those who have somewhat gotten used to that idea that there might be threats, I guess that it's easier than to just say that, well, don't think about it, But I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I agree. And I go actually back to getting familiar with the emotions and what kind of feelings they bring into you. So yeah, we saw when the pandemic started, people were panicking in Finland. People were panicking because coffee shops were closed. My world is ending now. I'm like, myself and my colleagues, we were wondering that how come this feels so comfortable? You know, everything has been locked down and you have so little choices what to do. And we were like, this feels so comfortable. And we realized that this felt so comfortable because we've been in this kind of environments in many times. So it felt comfortable. But for people who did not have that experience, they felt the opposite.
Yeah.
And I argue that the difference is that through training and your life, you've been exposed to these different scenarios which create emotions, which result in feelings, and they were not new. You knew that, okay, this will come here, I will feel it in my left shoulder. I say bye bye, and I will continue. But majority of the things, because we've been living in such safe haven, it wasn't like this. It was the first time, as you said, whoa, there's a threat in my backyard. What's happening now?
Truly. Yeah, we have had a bit of a distance bias that all the crises and problems are somewhere very far from us, but perhaps that's not anymore the case. What would you say that what are the sort of common misconceptions of resilience? Perhaps what people think that it is. I, for example, read an article that maybe people think that resilience is a trait that people either have or does not have when you're born. That it's a psychological trait. But the sort of studies and everything shows that you can actually, it's a skill to some extent that you can actually train and develop over time. That of course must be some psychological sort of inherent traits in it as well, but to great extent it's about the circumstances and how you can sort of handle pressure and stress. What would you say about that?
Well, I think, yeah, what comes to resilience, well, it's a very complex thing, and I don't know. Somehow people think that resilience is only about it's either only about the individual or then it's only about the organization, and in all cases it's actually a mixture of that. So
Yeah.
the individuals who are part of the organization or part of the community or part of something, they are the sum of resilience is the sum of these individuals. So at the same time, the personal, for example, myself, my level of resilience, if I would say, is basically the sum of my experiences in life. As you said, the experiences in life, they create resilience or they take away the resilience depending on what's my reaction to all these kind of things that happens in my life. So if these things affect my resilience, of course we can also train, and this is something that happens in the special forces a lot. Maybe you see these tactical exercises and drills and people do shooting and dang dang dang, all this romantic cool stuff, but in my opinion, at the end of the day, it's about introducing yourself, exposing the guys to variety of emotions and feelings, and providing tools to cope and manage those emotions and feelings. And that's how you start building resilience.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I think that maybe one misconception is that resilient people wouldn't be feeling weak or vulnerable anytime. That the philosopher Esa Saarinen once said that nobody's so strong that they would be always strong. So I guess that also reflects that quite well, that what I know about you guys at the Special Forces, most of you guys are pretty softies and sensitive people.
Yeah.
Deep down, you're not that tough guys. You're tough on the battlefield, but in normal life, you're just normal people.
Yeah, but I think that's also part. Of course, that comes from the culture as well.
Yeah,
You are trained to talk about your feelings. You're trained to deal with these uncomfortable feelings you have,
yeah,
and you go through all these things in your head and in your mind with your teammates, and
yeah,
this I think this somehow
yeah,
builds this kind of empathy for the
yeah,
guys.
yeah. And that comes also to this sort of maybe one misconception that the resilient people are, lone wolves, and they live in the woods, and they are, can handle everything themselves. But actually, resilient people are good in building social connections and getting energy from others, give energy to others. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree on that one. And also, what comes to resilience, it's also important to understand that we humans, we are not lone wolves by default. We want to be where other people are, and also when we have, if we are faced with a disaster or some sort of incident or something like that, we look social cues from the environment to get enforcement of what is expected behavior from me.
Yeah,
And this does highlight the fact that actually resilient people, they can actually have these resilient persons can be a highly positive impact to, for example, the local community. If there is one person who is really resilient, so people look for social cues. Hey, this person is actually already doing this. Maybe that's the proper response for this situation.
yeah, that's great. Fantastic stuff, and really, really appreciate your view on that. I also looked at a bit how to sort of improve the resilience oneself, and one point was that you can increase your sort of diet of positive emotions and thinking, and even humor, in the midst of extreme pressure, or even sadness and sorrow and everything. I think humor is a central part of resilience, that you can actually laugh to everything, laugh to the situation, laugh to yourself. And I think that military in general is kind of full of black humor, and it's full of humor in itself. Would you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree, and that is one way to cope the stressful environment where you are exposed to, and and that's the thing in this context where you have the team somewhere in Afghanistan and there is a shitty situation and they're laughing about it. It is a way to basically diffuse in that situation so that the stress is not overwhelming. If you
Yeah,
check it from here and you're seeing a live stream of these guys under a really tough situation laughing and joking about really nasty stuff, you think that they are crazy, but they are not crazy. It's a way of coping. And I think that's that's really important to be able to humor yourself about it. And many times we had this saying, we were doing some stuff and it felt really uncomfortable and stuff like that. So we were like, oh, this is total bullshit. And then the guys were like, yeah, but at least it's bullshit together. And then you keep going. And I think that's kind of the spirit of it. It's like, yeah, but we are in it together. So yeah, let's do
yeah,
it.
absolutely. Fantastic. And then other ways how to build resilience were mentioned, that cognitive flexibility and accurate thinking, sort of also understanding that problems are typically temporary, and you can sort of positively reframe those situations, that also that they can become valuable for you. So seeing value in adversity, so that they talk about post-traumatic growth as well. So something might be traumatic to you, but then if you sort of can reframe the traumatic experience, you can actually grow and learn from the crisis. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, I definitely agree on that one. And if people are familiar with Linkov's curve, which is usually referred when talking about business continuity planning, it quite quite well visualizes also the way of learning after a crisis in a personal way. So first thing what we do is when we are under the crisis, our functions start to go deep dive. Then we stop. Then we start to recover. And during the recovery process, we want to go above the original line. If this is like the let's say personal capability line, so we want to go above. So after the crisis, we are better than what we were before the crisis. So, but the thing is that the the challenging part is to time it correctly. I mean, when is the right time to reflect yourself that how can I be better in this next time if you're going through a difficult process in your head. So that's something.
I'm sharing the screen for now for those who are looking at the screen. I found this like the Lincoln Kernel. I don't know if this is the one that you referred to, but it immediately spanned some thoughts that the performance is related to how much pressure you feel, that somewhere in the comfort and stretch you typically get optimal performance. I don't know if this is true, but when the pressure gets like overwhelming, then the performance starts to get lower. So I guess that increasing the ability of the team to actually work under pressure together and move the sort of curve to the right is also one thing that one wants to consider. But there's certainly somewhere a region where you have fatigue, exhaustion, poor health, lower performance coming into the play. So yeah, no, I just quickly check this up. Does this reflect something to you?
Yeah, this is a good illustration, and this is something for all the leaders to really take a print and put it in your work tables, because this is a leadership thing that you're able to maintain your teams within the green area. And whenever you see that they go on the yellow side, you need to provide them circumstances to recover so they go back to the green area. But this is actually not the Lincoln curve that I was referring to. But if you use this picture and you check the Lincoln's curve, you see the similarities there as well.
Certainly, and one curve that I've been using is that we might go to underperformance, and that would be the area where your resilience is under extreme test. Sort of you go to burnout basically, and you go to underperformance, and the question, are you able to come back, and how fast, and from how deep of a dip in your performance, sort of underperformance, you are getting back. And I guess that's the point of resilience, how well you are able to coming back to the not necessarily even to the optimal performance, but even to some level of decent performance. But of course, sometimes, like you said, that the optimal performance can rise and rise and rise if you can handle this curve in a positive nature. But yeah, great point. I'll shut off the screen, but I will be looking to the Lincoln's curve, not right now, but maybe a later date. Would be maybe great to have a second thought on that. But yeah, what about you? What about then? There was also factors on resilience, looking at the sort of self-control, self-esteem, sort of having the belief in yourself that you can overcome the obstacle and the goal. Do you see that as a sort of factor yourself?
Yeah, I think that's a very significant factor, and I also argue that that's one of the key elements in fighting against the uncertainty. So I've tried to explain this to myself, and that the way I see it, as the operational environment in Afghanistan was really good example of this. So basically, when you're out patrolling, the enemy always has the decision where and how and they will always have the first punch. So that means that you're always in the responsive mode, which is really terrible situation when we are talking about combat situation. So each time you go out, you are filled with these really terrible thoughts of IEDs and ambush and stuff like that. And there is just basically no way of knowing whether the shit will hit the fan after the next hill or after that hill, or will it not hit the fan at all. So you don't know what's going to happen, but and you cannot be on the edge all the time. So the way we were able to manage that uncertainty was that we had a really strong team, and basically we knew that whatever happens, it doesn't matter, we will counter it and we will survive it. So we were not sure what would happen, but we were absolutely sure that whatever happens, we will survive. And I think that's the way to fight against the uncertainty. When you are absolutely sure that I know I will survive it, then the uncertainty, it doesn't have an effect on you because it's somewhere there. I don't care if it comes here. I'm just gonna, wipe the floor and keep going.
Yeah, that's great, and I guess that there's an element also on sort of extreme commitment, or sort of that you guys must have had, and remember myself distant times from the military, that also, the acceptance of death, basically. So there is also that side of the coin, right? That we cannot control everything, and the bullet might hit you in the head, and that's it. And then if it happens to your pal there, then that's what happened. And probably then, of course, the emotions and everything has to be dealt after the fact. But what would you say also about the sort of deep acceptance of anything that would happen? Like, because of course that's your mindset, that you're gonna survive, you're gonna tackle any threat, and so on. But that's you're not necessarily going to survive, right? So how do you see that dichotomy? In another way, you're completely sure that we're gonna survive, but on another view, that you might not actually come back. So how do you see that?
No, but that's the thing. You don't give space to this kind of uncertainties.
Yeah.
And that's another example. Was we were doing some military drills in Djibouti, and nighttime we went to the waters and went there for a swim, and we started to see this like shiny things in the water, and we were like, oh, we know that the whale shark was about to come there, and we were like, oh shit, are they now here? And it felt really scary, and then we were just in the water, it was total darkness, and we got, okay, we should not think about that, we need to swim on shore, and we just remove it from your head. And the minute you remove it from your head, you start focusing on the objective, and when you focus on that one, you have something to lean on. Then it just, there is no space for these kind of question marks who then just disrupt your way of working. And from this we come to the importance of having these kind of tangible objectives, or as I call, like anchors to hold on when you feel that now it's getting really, really stormy weather, and it's really scary. So I need to have things that put me in place that I am in control.
Truly.
When you're sorry, I continue. When you're in operations abroad, there's the breakfast, the lunch, the dinner, they come at the same time, and these are psychologically really important anchors, because you know that this will happen, and this will happen, and this will happen. The problem is that if it doesn't happen, the impact is also quite huge, because then your safe harbor, the controlled anchor, has been removed. You're like, hey, what's going on here? And that creates bad feelings.
I guess you have had a couple of bad feelings about missing lunches, but but if we go to the bit of this sort of how to, some practical strategies to maintain resilience during the challenges. I read, or rather saw, a clip from former Navy SEAL Leif Baban, who talked about iterative decision making and making small, rapid decisions, so that you won't make mistakes with the big ones, that you try to, in a hairy situation, that you try to do something too radical and that goes to south, but rather, like, you move there, you go on that hill, and you make those little decisions, but constantly, so that you keep on the move. Is that something that you've been using yourself in the operations?
Yeah, definitely. The small wins. There is, I believe that there is few psychological things why these are really like good strategies to cope in this kind of situation. For one, we humans, we hate to be wrong, and always when we are thinking of our decisions, we compare the like, for example, if you're ordering a food, you're thinking that I'm not sure if I'm going to take this or this, and then if I take this, that might have been better. So the same happens in this uncertain environment. So we are afraid of being wrong in a way, and that might lead into decision paralysis. We are not unable to decide anything.
Yeah.
When we take only small decisions, the risk or the impact of being wrong is much more smaller. So
Yeah.
it's much more easier to make the decision. And also when the environment is very dynamic, after 3 small steps, the situation might be different. So in that sense, it's important to take small decisions and go small steps, step by step, and see how the situation evolves.
Certainly. I also recognize in myself, I don't know if I'm that resilient or not, but probably in some sense, yes. I'm always, when I have a tricky situation or pressure, I always start creating options, like like quickly, and then I choose one path of action and start acting, like, like rapid strategizing and moving. Like, I don't know, that's just something, maybe it's coming from the military or somewhere, but that's something that I just always do. And maybe there's something similar there, that it's it's the movement that keeps you sane and keeps you actually in good spirits, because then you have some sense of control, even though they could be quite mundane things that you start doing, but at least you start moving to some direction. And you mentioned about the Second World War in Finland, that did you mention that the military leadership in Finland consciously made people, during the war of attrition, when people were in the trenches, to actually constantly do something, like dig a little bit more of this trench, or arrange that fireplace, or I don't know, whatever, so that the soldiers were kept in movement, so that they wouldn't be sticking there and getting all sorts of ideas in their head.
Yeah, exactly. So that's like you do physical things to make sure that they don't spend too much time in processing these uncertainties in their heads. So again, you take away of the what should I do now? Hey, I want to think. No, you keep digging kind of approach.
Yeah, exactly. I've been wondering how the guys in Ukraine in those trenches keep sane, because it's so long war of attrition in the trenches, and same in Gaza, been like horrible for months and months out, like, or years, of course, decades already, in a sense. So in many situations, it's amazing how resilient people actually can be. And I don't think that we even know ourselves how resilient we can be. So I think that we are often too afraid of circumstances, that we would cope with some mechanisms and some methods anyway. So I feel like that.
We are too afraid of the uncomfortable situations,
Yeah.
whether it's physical or mental, and we try to avoid this, and when we don't need to expose into these rough environments, we just become soft because we start to be afraid. When we are afraid, we are unable to do anything. So
Yeah. And that's a good point, that maybe we are just afraid of uncomfortable. Sometimes not necessarily even afraid of our life, but losing the comfortable life, probably more sometimes. Do you have yourself certain, personal experiences where you have been, your resilience have been tested, and you've been able to recoup your energy?
yeah, I've had quite a few of those experiences. Well, in my notebook, always the first page says that a crazy person doesn't know himself that he's crazy, which is a reminder for me that I always need to kind of reflect my decisions to understand and how to be better. But there was, I think it's actually almost daily 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with meningoencephalitis, which is basically this condition where your both sides of the brain is inflamed, and protective membranes covering the brain and spinal cord are all just inflamed, and that's a really dangerous condition. And I was submitted to ER, and then I was 3 days in coma. And it was a heavy show, especially because my spouse was expecting our second child at the time, and the doctor told her that it's going to be 50-50 if I'm going to survive. And most likely, if I survive, I will have some neurological issues afterwards. However, I was able to survive it, and after some months after that situation, I got back on my feet, and but actually, when I got back on my feet during the summer, I learned that they had found this aneurysm. I don't know how to pronounce it, which is basically a small bulge in artery inside the skull. And it was supposed to be an easy treat, like, okay, no problem, we're just gonna do this small, almost non-surgical operation to fix it. And I went to a doctor's appointment, and then the doctor hit me with the shovel, saying that, okay, we're gonna open your skull and you're going to full surgery. And I was like, what, really? I just kind of survived this meningoencephalitis catastrophe, and now you're putting me to surgery. I said, yeah. The problem was that he put me in a 6 month in Finland. Within 6 months you will get the scheduled time for the surgery, but they know only 2 weeks before. So you can imagine. I was there after the treatment. I went to the car. I still remember it like yesterday. I just started to cry, and I was really difficult to breathe, and I was like, what the beep is going on here? And then I was able to cope. I did some box breathing. Okay, all cool. So during the 6 month period, you can imagine, I had 2 kids. I still have 2 kids, luckily. And 6 months, you have to live with the thought of you will get a call, and in 2 weeks you will be on surgery, and there will be the morning when you leave your home and you tell your kids that daddy is now going to surgery, and you don't know what's going to happen afterwards.
Yeah.
So that was really difficult time, but the way I was able to survive for that 6 months was that I went through the scenario of me leaving the house multiple times. So I exposed myself to those very uncomfortable feelings. I did my crying, I did my yelling, and I those emotions and feelings were not something new to me on the morning when I left. So when I left, I was calm, I was in control. I went to the doctor. I didn't take any pre-medication because I wanted to be really like in control and on the spot. And this way I was able to live almost normal life during the 6 months when I was basically on leash, just waiting for the call. And actually what happened that I got the time for the surgery, and then like 3 days before that they canceled it and said, okay, we have to schedule a new one. And that was a really heavy hit So we went back, but luckily I had the strategies in place. So I was like, hey, what the hell? Let's wait. And then we got a new timing and stuff like that. So that's something that this experience has a lot of different angles of resilience and stuff like that. But I think those are the key points. But also I want to warn everyone that when you use the strategy of basically a scenario playing, what will happen? It's heavy job. It's emotionally, it's really heavy. But when you do it beforehand, and when the actual thing happens, then you collect the prize, because then it's not that heavy, because you've trained your mind and body to confront this kind of situation.
That's great. I also, that's quite heavy example, and actually comes to my mind that imagine that the doctor at the ER doing the surgery, that his resilience probably played a factor whether the surgery succeeded or not. We don't know. Everybody has a battle that we don't know about. So we don't know if that doctor had maybe his wife or her wife or husband in another ER, or maybe in a cancer treatment or something else, that we probably under extreme pressure. And then, having that resilience helped you to, recover, and you being resilient. So all of our resilience actually helps each other to be more resilient, sort of. So that's kind of interesting. And what comes to the sort of a psychological scenario building, I guess that one aspect of good scenario building also in corporations is that it somewhat touches upon your emotions, that it's so credible that you get those oh fuck feelings, and then you go through the emotions. And in personal life or whatever life, I have done that emotions working quite a lot, maybe previously more, but of course gotten much fair share of personal problems and so on. So certainly I've utilized that quite a lot, but maybe less and less, because I have probably covered most of those scenarios that are now coming ahead me. So
Yeah.
so there's less and less scenarios to go through in life, but all shitty ones. But I lucky, probably I still have fair share of bad scenarios coming at me. So I'm happy that I still have some work, but on the sort of practical tips and tricks, we can close soon. But you were talking about sort of box breathing. Is that one technique that you sometimes, that box breathing in difficult situations, for example?
Yeah, definitely. Box breathing is one of the most easiest ways to take control of your mind and body in stressful situation, whether it is an anxiety before joining a webinar, whether it is some life-threatening situation, or whether it's a business crisis you're at. It doesn't matter, and there's a lot of research supporting the fact that it actually works. And if people online, if you're not familiar with box breathing, Google it, learn to it, make it a habit, and yeah, your life will be better in these terms.
Yeah, that's a great one. And I think that the mechanisms and tools for becoming more resilient are so many, because they come from like situational things like, box breathing, getting your mind calm and focus and so on, and all the way to spirituality or some, finding meaning, deep sort of beliefs in your life, and then everything in between. That this is truly a big topic that we have discussed today. Well, it would be nice to go into that spirituality route and everything here, but it takes another hour. So, but do you have some maybe sort of key takeaways yourself that we should be considering from this discussion, that people could think when they go to their own lives here after this webinar?
Well, I think one is that when we live in such an uncertain world, it's really important that you identify what you can control and accept what you can't.
Yeah.
And always create these kind of anchors in your life that are solid, that are something that you can control. And when you feel that I don't have any control of anything what's happening, you can always fall back to that, whatever your personal safe anchor is.
Yeah.
And keep your mind open for options. That's also another thing, because when the world is changing, you need to change the way you are thinking, or maybe change your strategy. If you are too attached to certain objective or certain goal, it might actually hurt you because you just try to fight against the current. So keep your mind open, be flexible for options. And also I want to say that as each person is an individual and is most likely reacting in a very different way to exactly same situation. So whether you are a leader, whether you're a family member or whatever, it's really important to understand that we all experience the same situation in our unique way, and there is no wrong way of experiencing it. It's only a different ways of experience. This is really good to understand.
That's great takeaway. And Jeff Bezos mentioned sometimes that stress is about. I agree that it's important to understand what you can't control over, but then he said that stress is about that you have things that you could do something about, but you're not doing anything about them. So I think that that's also one thing that we should maybe keep in mind and take as a one takeaway from here, that take action, move at least a little bit, keep yourself in the move, and see adversities as opportunities actually to adapt and develop and grow and develop new coping mechanisms and grow in the future as a human being, and being able to sort of cope whatever is in front of you. But I guess we came to the end of this session. We met like 20 years ago already in the military, but after this session, I think that I know you even better, and it's great to get your views on this. Thank you so much, Juhani. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here. It's been a pleasure. Always pleasure having talks with you. So I'm hoping that we will have the bottle of red wine and go to campfire and go deep into the spiritual world of this psychological resilience as well.
It will take.
Can all of us join you?
Yeah. You're welcome. Truly, everybody's welcome to that
fireside chat. Yeah, thank you. On behalf of everyone, I think this has been a very, very, very intriguing and interesting discussion. And I think while we have recorded this webinar, I think it would totally make sense to take the transcript and turn it into a blog. And in this particular case, I would actually like to say that it doesn't matter if it becomes a very long blog, because these things are honestly very, very interesting. And also thanks for the very concrete tips and things. Just a couple of words. I know we're not over time yet, about our upcoming next webinar. That's going to be on May the 13th with Sodali, and we're going to be discussing sustainability and ERM. So you can already reserve your spot here through the QR code. And then, of course, we have Juhani's contact details, LinkedIn profile behind the QR code. And of course, if you want to then get to know Inclus a little bit better, you can also reserve a demo. But again, thank you, Juhani, and thank you, Miki, and thank you, everyone, for attending.
Absolutely. And talk to Juhani. He's a great guy, and Takana is a fantastic company. We work a lot with them as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.